Hello again, everybody. Yeah, it's nice to be with you. Nice to be back with you, Elvis.
Welcome back, Eben, all the way from Italy, hey?
Yeah, I did a bit
Pizza and wine.
Pizza, wine, lots of pasta, as you can see. Look a little bit heavier, but hopefully the winter I'll be able to drop a few of the pounds.
Well, welcome back. Let's start and get down to business today.
Interesting. Protest nation. That's where we live. It gives me a totally new perspective, having been away and coming back. Of course, we're talking about the shops looted by residents in Eldorado Park over the last couple of days. So we asked this question: how do we protest, Elvis, without violence and looting? It seems to be the way that we protest now.
People are protesting for houses and RDP houses, especially in the south of Johannesburg, Eben, and that's why we're asking: can you not protest without looting and without violence?
These protests have spread now. We can report Ennerdale, the latest neighborhood to be affected. Shortly we'll be there, but we're also asking you, of course, a poll today. And that is with regards to Eldorado Park specifically. A little bit later we'll get an update there, but that's our poll today: is are the protests in Eldorado Park justified?
Well, we got hashtag Eldorado Park protests, and Eldo protests, and of course SABC News. So 192 votes in, 62% of you are saying yes, the protests in Eldorado Park are justified. 38% are saying no.
Let's take a look at your tweets, what you guys are talking with regards to this. Peter Mufokeng rather comes in and says, is he so sad that the government waits for protests before they could listen to the people? Government, listen, 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 says Peter Mufokeng.
Listen. Kuang says, protest justified, but the destruction and the looting is disgusting.
Peter comes back, he says, when people are not happy about service delivery, the government must come to the party and should not wait for the worst.
This one from Peter again, it is so sad. In fact, that one we did already. Listen, he says, you must listen to the people.
Yeah, you guys are also tweeting us on the question of the day. Now, our question of the day, of course, deals directly with violence and looting that we see as normal order of business these days. Continually, Elvis, we see that they degenerate, these protests.
We've seen it in Collini, Eben. We've seen it in Eldorado Park. We've seen it in Vuwani. It's spreading now to Ennerdale. Where else is going to happen? So this one from Sitsaba says, South African government listen with protest and criminals join those protests. And that is legitimate because there is a criminal element to these protests as well.
We'll talk at length about that today. Mashudu comes in and says, the government never listens to peaceful protests. No one listens until it gets out of hand. So what Mashudu is saying is that government should listen when people are protesting peacefully and not when people are burning and looting. And
not be reacting afterwards. This one from Sabisa says, every protest is hijacked by a criminal element, so it will never be non-violent, says Sabisa.
How do we deal with that is our question to you. Bob Marley Month says, national dialogue should include this. Corruption is taking away resources meant for development.
These are some of your comments coming through. Keep them coming on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. You can send us a tweet. You can also participate in the poll, and we'll read them as we continue. We'll
be live in Ennerdale for an update shortly as these protests are now spreading. Don't go away. Elvis will keep us updated shortly.
Protest action in Eldorado Park is now spread to other places in the south of Johannesburg. Ennerdale and Lawley have become the latest to be hit by the protests. The South African National Civic Organization has applied to review the court decision to grant bail to Peter Doorwaard and Philip Skitter from Collini. And 5 lions have reportedly escaped from the Kruger National Park on the loose in Mpumalanga. It's a roaring morning there. Those are your headlines. But before we get up to scratch with what's roaring in the country, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on this.
It sounds a bit like something from a movie, Escape from the Kruger. You got 5 lions roaring around. And very interesting that.
Exactly,
and,
yes.
You know what, Eben, I think while you were away, Matt has reached fever pitch around the world of football. I don't know what it was like where you were with, I think, Roma and Juve vying for top honors.
Yeah, it was just Italian football. But to be honest, I had zero exposure to South African news or even international sports news and that, because I was right in the middle of the Mediterranean. And to be honest, I feel refreshed because I've offloaded a lot of the news stress because of it.
Now, I was hoping to get a cool postcard, one of those like wish you were here postcards, but it didn't happen. Good morning to you. This is what we've got from you for the sports today. Title chasers Cape Town City FC travel to Pretoria intent on grabbing 3 points from a resurgent SuperSport United.
Fabregas as Peliqueta. Alonso! He's found the gap! It's a big gap now between Chelsea and the rest.
Chelsea are 1 win away from taking the English Premiership as they relegate Middlesbrough with a 3-0 thrashing in London last night. Eugenie Bouchard beats Maria Sharapova for the first time in a 3-set thriller of a grudge match, as she called the Russian a cheat following her doping ban.
Most people have my opinion, and they were just maybe scared to speak out. But privately, you know, I've gotten a lot of support.
Now, all this in more detail we'll have for you later on at 10:40. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The protest action in Eldorado Park is now spread to other places in the south of Johannesburg. Ennerdale and Lawley have become the latest to be hit by protest. Residents say they are tired of non-development in their area. Griselda Lewis is in the area to give us the latest there. Very good morning to you, Griselda. Can you tell us what is the latest?
Well, a very good morning to you, Elvis. The situation, as you can see through those pictures, is extremely tense. Residents have been burning tyres and barricading the road here in Ennerdale since very early this morning. You recall, of course, that this is not the first time that the residents of Ennerdale have gone on the rampage. Recall, of course, in the run-up to the local government elections, we saw quite a number of political parties that had come to this area after it turned violent, and residents are saying there's been very little development in Ennerdale for a number of years. They're complaining about vacant land, which they're saying that government needs to allocate to them. They're also saying that their children in this particular area have turned to drugs as a result of unemployment and opportunities that do not exist in this area. As you can see, residents continue to stand around here. There is quite a strong police presence here in Ennerdale. Recall, of course, this is very much linked to the situation that we've also seen in Eldorado Park. The very same concerns that we saw in Eldorado Park when residents took to the streets yesterday, the very same concerns that this community is complaining about. I'll walk towards this direction. As you can see, the road itself is strewn with some rocks and some stones as well. Let me chat to one of the community leaders who also, in the run-up to the local government elections, was also on the streets together with these residents complaining over the very same concerns. Marge, thank you very much for your time this morning. You're back here again this morning. We see the residents of Ennerdale are on the streets of the very same concerns that we were here for in the run-up to the local government elections. Tell us a bit about what has happened that has now led to this point where we're seeing that the situation itself is quite tense.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Griselda. This is what's happened, nothing. Since the last strike that we had in May, we were promised that by Paul Mashetilia that development is going to start from the very next year. The budget was rolled out. Ennerdale is not featuring anyway. So which means, again, we were taken for a ride. We were told that houses is going to be built in Ennerdale Extension 6. We've been attending Ennerdale Extension 6. We were told there's houses that's going to be built there. No house has been built. We've been attending these meetings. They appointed civil engineers, and Urban Dynamics is one of the consultants that was appointed. And in the negotiations was said that the only thing that's holding them back for them not to develop, it's because they don't have the authority of the land. That we heard already last year, around about June, July. they have received. However, it was confirmed that I've got the paper trail, as I said, that on email, where we have received the acknowledgement that the authority letter has been signed off. When the authority letter came, a new story came up. This is what pushed us to go out to the street. Now a new story came up that no, they cannot develop because they are still waiting on environmental health authority to give us a report to say that go ahead, which it was never discussed from onset. And the same consultants came to the table and said there's a water stream at the bottom of extension 6, which they had to minimize the houses they were going to build there. So how did they get the water stream? Who found it if it was not environmental guys? So what we're saying is that they are time delaying. There's never going to be houses. They're never going to do anything in Ennerdale. We are not in the truth of the matter is we all have access to the budget and we are not featuring anywhere in the budget. The only place or thing that's featuring in the budget of Ennerdale is this very same street.
Do you feel you've been taken for a ride? Because we were here in the run-up to the local government elections where you saw the Democratic Alliance, together with the ANC, try to quell tensions here over the very concerns that you raised as the community relating to underdevelopment as well as housing.
Yes, I feel that, yes, we are taken for a ride. We were very important to the Democratic Alliance as well as to the ANC to go and cast our votes for them because it was just prior to the elections. There was nobody that had to call the Paul Mashabas to come out or Herman Mashabas to come out and the Paul Mashatiles to come out. They knew the direction to Ennerdale. All of a sudden now, a year later, that they are now sitting in their cozy jobs where we have voted them into. They have forgotten about us. We're not existent anymore. Now, we need to ask them, we need to make phone calls to beg them to come out here, as well as our president, because it takes us further to being citizens of South Africa. Jacob Zuma has never ever set foot in Ennerdale. I don't even think he knows there's an area like Ennerdale. We have the same crisis. We have the same crisis with drugs in Ennerdale, of unemployment. Our children are sitting at home. I have said that if they can employ at least 1,000 of our children, you will not see this happening again. Because then our children can then buy their own houses. Then they can keep their houses, employ our children. I am now in my 40s. This has happened with my parents. So must it happen to my children, to my grandchildren? Must this run over from generation to generation? I think we are. Up to now, we have called calls, we're cut for. We're not going to take any nonsense from the government.
Thank you very much, Marge, for your time. That certainly is the sentiment that is shared by many of the residents here in Ennerdale, who are saying that despite the many calls they've made on government to intervene in the housing crisis, as well as what they say is underdevelopment in Ennerdale, all of that has fallen on deaf ears, also accusing two political parties, the ANC and the DA, of really taking them for a ride, because you'd recall in the run-up to the local government elections, this is where we were as well, Elvis, with the residents raising the very same concerns. So residents are basically saying these are the scenes that will continue until someone comes up with a lasting solution to their concerns here at Ennerdale in the south of Johannesburg. We'll certainly bring you quite a lot more, but police and the community have also been having talks to try and see how this road that has been closed can be reopened. You'd know, of course, that the traffic has not been flowing in this area since very early this morning. It's, of course, been cordoned off by these burning tires and these rocks as well, but police have really exercised maximum restraint at this time. We'll certainly bring you a whole lot more here from Ennerdale a bit later on, as residents say they will continue to be on the street until someone in authority comes and speaks to them.
Griselda, just briefly, that road where you are right now, is that the main road leading towards the highway, and what is the police presence like? Well, it seems like Griselda can't hear us there. We'll try and get back to her a little bit later to give us an update on the situation there. As you can see, burning tires in the main roads coming out of Eldorado Park. We'll find out also what's happening in fact, that's Ennerdale. We'll find out what's happening in Eldorado Park a little bit later from our reporter there. But Eben, this is an ongoing story. You've been out of the country. You've missed some of these things that's happening. It's been building up, and you can see it's exploding right now in areas in Eldorado Park, Freedom Park, and of course spilling over to Ennerdale as well.
Is it being underreported?
That is another question.
You know, is the first thing that stands out for me. It seems as if there are a lot of protests and a lot of this kind of emotion bubbling under the surface in our communities. But that's why we ask the questions. First, is it justified? Is it justified Do we want development? Have these promises been made by politicians? We heard in that clip. But let's have a look at what people are saying, Elvis, before we carry on. What do you think?
Are the protesters in Eldorado Park, or the protests in Eldorado Park, justified? This is what we ask you. 209 votes are in thus far, people. 62% of you are saying yes, they are justified. 38% are saying no. But people are also tweeting us, even on the question.
Interesting that the majority would say, yes, the protests are justified, because as soon as you engage in violence, looting and the like, you kind of get sentiment turning against you. Max tweets us, he says, the sad reality is that coloureds are a forgotten race in South Africa because we're still fighting black on white issues. Newsroom. This is Max.
Petrus Long says, I don't agree with violent protest, but it seems this is the only language, and it's not body language, is the language that our government understands. Government must listen, says Petrus.
Pangai Sengarai says, maybe not. Maybe it's justified, maybe it's not justified. Well, sit on the fence, eh?
Well, this one from Mahafa says, they justified, but looting shops is a crime. Government should respond quickly to people's needs.
Yeah, Elvis, it's easy to blame government for whatever. Of course, we see more protests elsewhere in the country. It seems as if we are heading into a period of protest. I can report to you that the R503 and the N4 national road linking Lichtenburg and Collini, as well as the N14 linking Collini and Ventersdorp in the northwest, they've now been opened for traffic. They were, of course, closed overnight following violent protests there as well. Residents once again went on the rampage after a local court granted bail to two men who they say allegedly killed a 16-year-old boy, Matlomola Mosweo, 3 weeks ago. Now, the South African National Civic Organization has applied to review this decision. Now, for the latest on what is, another bubbling story, let's go over to our reporter, Olebo Khenghosilenchwe, who's been in the Collini area since yesterday. A very good morning to you, Lebo. I know you've got a guest with you, but just set the scene for us. What is the mood there right now?
Good morning, Eben. Well, I can tell you that it's very calm in Collini this morning. Driving in, we saw that the R503 has been opened. That's the road between Lichtenburg and Collini. So traffic is flowing freely. We have not seen any members of the community at all here this morning. We've not seen any protests, but police are really standing by for any action that may take place, for any incidents of violence or protesting that may take place. We've also spoken to, the white community of Collini, Eben, and they're telling us that they're very reluctant to speak with us on camera on the basis that they fear victimization. Many of them are business people whom between now, from 2 weeks ago, their businesses have been broken into, set alight and being looted. So they've lost quite a lot in business. Some can't even quantify how much they've lost. There is such a lot of devastation here, even, but they cannot talk to us because they fear that will incite the community to even attack them even further.
Yeah, Lebo, you can carry on. Just talk to the guests there and let's find out what they have to say.
All right, Eben, I'm now with Mr. Stan Mnyakama. He is a local principal at one of the high schools here in Collini. He's also a member of the community, a leader of the community who's been quite at the center of this protest ever since the death of Matlomola Mosweu. Good morning, Mr. Mnyakama. Schools have been closed. We are heading to June examinations. How has this incident in Collini really affected the education system?
This incident has affected all grades in all schools and high schools. And I would emphasize to say especially grade 3, 6, 9, and 12. Because these are the people who are writing usually external question papers. The exam is handled externally. Now, one thing, for these 5 days that had been wasted, it says to me, teachers would be lagging behind on syllabus coverage. And for the learners to write these exams, They need to be updated, well-informed, well-learned, knowing, revising everything that needs to be revised.
All right, Mr. Mnyakama, you've also been at the forefront leading the community ever since Matlomola passed away. What do you have to say about what transpired here yesterday? A lot of houses being burned down, businesses being broken into.
It's unfortunate, but one has got to say, this situation cannot go unabated, number one. Number two, ordinary people, innocent people are losing properties, as we have also lost an innocent soul. This to us is very painful, realizing that if this thing could keep on going, one death, it will be more chaotic. I'm afraid this thing will heighten the racial tension. Although I had to say in the same breath, it's not every white man who's a racist. I will keep on emphasizing on this. We've got good examples of those who are, others are our son-in-laws, others we also have Makotis right down in town.
All right, Mr. Mnyakama, you are just about to get into a meeting. Briefly tell us who will be part of that meeting and what is at the center of that meeting.
The mayor of the Tsawata will be here. Principals of all schools and HODs will be here. Senior officials of SABS who are here. All stakeholders, business people, farmers, as well as business people locally here. But I'm very much happy that every stakeholder is catered here, even the foreigners.
And what are you going to discuss in there? What are you hoping to get out of that meeting?
Is to get a common understanding. Because, there are also some people who are fanning this thing. I could tell you there was a clip that was moving around yesterday, but the police are aware of it, wherein farmers were invited to come with their weapons, clothed well, come armed to the town. Now you ask yourself, whom are they hunting? Those are the things that you say they are not good for this town. A week before the first sitting of the trial on a Friday, a Thursday or Wednesday thereof, people were also warned, especially whites. Move out of town before Friday. There will be buses coming into your town. Whites are going to be attacked. Those are pure lies. There are people who are sending wrong information, especially some few whites in town. They are sending wrong information to the residents of the town here. But I think we will overcome. But this meeting is all about getting a solution, strategizing, seeing what best ways could this thing be solved. That's the thing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mnyakama. There you have it, Eben, the community leaders meeting here with business people, white farmers, as well as the police to find a way in which residents of Collini can come together and really find a way forward in dealing with this matter. It's back to you in studio.
Yeah, thank you very much there to Lebo, giving us an update there from Collini. As you can see, community leaders are trying to bring peace to the area. Their racial tensions, of course, have been heating up there for weeks now, following the killing of a 16-year-old boy a couple of weeks ago now, 3 weeks to be exact. So, of course, our question of the day is, how do we protest without the violence and the looting that we see within our protests? Legitimate protests, some say, most of them, but they tend to turn violent and, well, resort to looting. You guys are tweeting us. Let's have a look at some of the tweets. Nelson says to us, all I can say is that action speaks louder than words. They have to listen, and act to avoid violence, I think, is what he says. Tabo tweets us, he says, first things first, let us understand the difference between a protest and an outrage. Then ask the right questions to get the right answers. It all seemed to be an outrage at the moment. Mahafa says, communicating, engaging with community and giving feedback. Very, very simple. Yes. Tangai comes and says, people should be taught from a young age to demonstrate, but not to destroy property. Yes, that's the trick, not to destroy property. This one from Sitsaba Kwepe says, Newsroom, South Africa's government listen with protests and criminals then join the protests. This is how we stop violence and looting. Well, how do you get stop criminals from joining the protest? Anyhow, we move on. Let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from Kimberly Marrix, and of course, the hashtag is still Eldorado Park. Now, this is somebody, one of our viewers, who tweeted us this picture, who says, this is the street where I live in. We were literally being shot at there. Yep, this is the daily reality of those living in Eldorado Park right now. Now, our comment of the day comes from Sharina, and, well, she says, I don't understand. Destroying the very suburb that you live in. Why not peacefully protest outside the union buildings? Hashtag Eldorado Park. We all have questions. We don't seem to have the answers today. Let's take a look at what's in the courts. All the cases of interest that will be heard today. We'll start in the northwest, of course. In the northwest, 2 rhino poaching suspects are expected to appear at the Ganyesa Magistrates Court in the northwest this morning. They, of course, were arrested in villages near Botswana's border last week. Finally, here in Gauteng, the judgment in 4 court cases relating to deductions from social grants that to be handed down in the High Court in Pretoria today. Interesting one. We'll keep you updated. Of course, we all know how much consternation that caused. Now, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll speak to business in the south here in Johannesburg. How do they feel about being attacked? And then a little bit later, well, we'll look at the social element of violent protests in the south of Johannesburg. Let's take that break.
Hypertension is the condition where the blood pressure, the pressure in the blood vessels, it goes up.
We often come out at the top of the ladder having the worst numbers. And I think that's because we almost have what I can call a perfect storm of high blood pressure risk factors.
If you are diagnosed with hypertension, you just have to continue taking the medication for the rest of the life.
Because we try and reintegrate them and we try and retrain their abilities to be part of social society.
We do a lot of work trying to educate people, trying to encourage and motivate people to lead a healthy lifestyle. So what a healthy lifestyle means from a blood pressure point of view is obviously the more active you are and the better your heart is, the more fit your heart is, and the better condition your blood vessels are.
Catch Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10 with Dr. Sillo Mutawu.
Government Employees Pension Fund is set to acquire a 5% stake in Kenya's power producer KenGen.
The company says the sale of the 5% stake could have material effect on its shares trading on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Last year, the company raised $264 million through a rights issue aimed at cutting its debt.
An alarm is growing in South Africa as the livelihood of millions of people who receive 17 million social grants still hangs in the balance. Right now, Net1's Cash Paymaster Services administers the payment of grants, but its contract with SASSA comes to an end in April. Neither the minister nor the SASSA CEO were present.
Welcome back. Very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, the protest action in Eldorado Park has now spread to other places in the south of Johannesburg. Ennerdale and Lawley have become lawless, the latest to be hit by protests. Residents say they are tired of the non-development in their area. Yesterday, at least 5 people were arrested for public violence following protests in Eldorado and Freedom Park. Residents there are demanding houses.
Hundreds of Eldorado and Freedom Park residents staged a morning protest. It left motorists fuming.
It's about time, please, to government, give us something also. Give us something also. Let us also own something. Our children are fooling in the houses, in the flats. You go to a flat, you find there's 15 people in the flat. In a one bedroom.
The protest turned ugly when police started dispersing the crowd. Scores of people were injured, including some media personnel. This shopping centre wasn't spared as protesters turned to looting, and a cellular store was cleaned out in less than a minute. Workers were left traumatized.
We locked ourselves in the stockroom, fearing for our lives. After, they threw bricks and shot their way in.
We locked ourselves in the toilet. At least we're safe.
Residents insist they will continue with protests until their demands are met. Human Settlements MEC Paul Mashatile is expected to meet community leaders. Lopang Alamu, SABC News, Golden Highway in Soweto.
Well, that was yesterday. Now, of course, we heard today that, well, matters are escalating in other neighborhoods now. Our reporter, Lopang Alamu, she's on the scene right there. If you can hear me, very good morning to you, Lopang. Are you with me?
Well, a very good morning to you, Eben. Definitely, I'm right here. Well, we are in Eldorado Park. As you can see behind me, everything is going smoothly. The roads are not blocked anymore. Total contrast of exactly what we saw yesterday at exactly this time. But what I can confirm to you is that yesterday we left here quite early. But after 8 p.m., the looting continued and more people went into the complex to continue to loot. So that is the latest development. The center is still closed at the moment so as to, investigate, allow police to clear up the scene as well. But I can confirm to you that these people continued to loot yesterday evening. This is why they are nowhere to be seen here today. Well, as you know, that the protests have spread to other parts of the south of Johannesburg. But for now, everything here is going smoothly. There has been no protest action today, as we had anticipated, since while they told us that they will not stop protesting until the MEC of Human Settlements, Paul Mashatile, comes and address them. But as you can see, there is no protest action, but we'll definitely keep you updated on any more developments with regards to the story.
Lopang, before I let you go, just tell me quickly about the extent of the damage and the cleaning up operation, because we saw some running battles for the better part of the day yesterday.
Well, definitely. I'll just move out of shot for you to see. So you can see there's some stones yesterday that have been used during the protest. Also, you look further down, more and more damage as you go down the road. But mostly it's stones, big rocks that the protesters were using to fight the police. Also, I'll ask Herbert to just move to my left, where you can see some of the aftermath of the tires that were burnt on the road. As you can see, there's still some people who came to assess the aftermath of the situation. I assume there are people who were not here yesterday, but everything is back to normal, as I had said. And, well, we are not sure if they are indeed going to protest. We'll definitely be here and keep you updated on any more new developments.
Yeah, Lopang, thank you very much for that update. Lopang is in Eldorado Park, as you can see, and, well, she'll keep us updated throughout the day as to what is happening there. But I'm joined in studio now by the media liaison for the Greater Eldorado Park Business Forum, Charis Pretorius. So very good morning to you, Charis. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Evan. Thanks for having me.
Now, we see business back to normal there. Is that part of the settlement that you, as the Business Forum, could kind of negotiate with the community?
Absolutely. Last night we then approached the members of the community and said to them, guys, we think that we've reached the point where people are actually listening to us. Yeah. So it would be great if we could just taper things down and get things back to normal.
The protest, what sparked the protests?
Eben, it's a culmination of many things. But most importantly, it evolved from joblessness. It evolved from unemployment. It evolves from people wanting houses. We had a meeting on Sunday, and the call came from the floor for us to address these issues. And who were we then to deny the community of Eldorado Park? So much has not been done for us over the last 23 years that we felt it was just up to us to actually pick up the gauntlet and run with it.
There's also a racial undertone, of course, to these protests, as is with most things in South Africa. The coloured community specifically, talking about not being catered for, not being cared for, no opportunities being created for. Is there a sense that this part of this unhappiness is driving this kind of protest?
The unhappiness is definitely driving it. However, what we realized yesterday, based on the other parties that joined in and formed part of almost a cohesive network, is that it is not just something that the community of Eldorado Park or any other so-called coloured community has to deal with. It is something that historically disadvantaged communities have to deal with at this point. And it's not just about colour.
As a business forum, what's your assessment of the situation right now? And of course, things are very volatile, and it will stay volatile for the foreseeable future. How do you get around this as the business forum in your discussions with these community members that we see that are obviously angry?
Obviously angry, and were in many instances justified. Moving forward, and the one thing that we need to address from here on out is, one, this is not a political situation. This is a socio-economic situation. And that is the biggest problem that this community has to deal with. So with us, we would like the powers that be, government, to come in and actually say to us, guys, what is it that we need to fix? Because that is the problem. Okay? Government has failed us as far as we are concerned. And moving forward, they need to liaise with us and actually take responsibility for the actions.
You talk about socio-economic problem that it is, and it's very easy for us to blame government, as we do in South Africa, for everything. Everything. Government must give, government must do, government must this. But you're with the business forum. Surely there's a responsibility within the business community to understand that part of their responsibility is to create jobs and create socio-economic change and so forth.
Absolutely. Eben, I agree with you 100%. The biggest problem that we have right now, however, and which also causes this frustration, is that over the last 9 months, 180 million rand came into the community with regards to projects. However, the people of Eldorado Park, the businesses in Eldorado Park, did not benefit from those projects. So yes, as much as we would like to participate, we are not being consulted when it comes to addressing these things and being capable of doing the work.
You saw the pictures there of a cell phone shop being targeted and stripped clean in less than a minute. You see smaller businesses in that being targeted and so forth. How do you view what is happening with those kinds of businesses and the mentality of going to steal?
You know, we could never propagate violence and criminal behavior. We can't say that it is right because it isn't. But sometimes it is all about people getting excited and also about people becoming angry. So I think to a large extent what's happened there is sheer frustration, pent-up frustration over all this time. And you know, I'm not saying that the behavior was correct, because we come down on it strongly, but it is unfortunately things that happen, and there are some things that is just humanly beyond our control.
Now we see these protests are spreading in the south of Johannesburg, and we of course know that all the communities in the south are very tight and very much linked in a way.
Yes.
Do you fear for these other communities now, and what is happening in the discussions that you are having with other business forums and so forth? Well,
you know, some of the other communities do have their own business forums, and they have come to us and they have said, thank you for highlighting exactly what it is that we are fighting for. Thank you for giving us a platform to come out and actually speak about the problems and the issues that we deal with. Because far too often we address things, we follow protocol, we do what is required of us, and yet there's not the proper response from the government specifically to those issues. So I think that we have identified that our plight is something that is uniformed across the communities, and that we need to now move forward and start identifying how we are going to fix the problems.
Yeah, we all have a role to play. We can't just point the finger at government, as we always like to do. We must get, you must give. Thank you for joining us today. Charis Pretorius is the Media Liaison Officer for the Greater Eldorado Park Business Forum, talking to us about, well, business their experience and, of course, the role that they're playing in bringing peace to these communities. Of course, we've been conducting a poll today. That poll's been running, and we're asking you about, well, the protests in Eldorado Park. Are they justified? What do you say to that? We've got 227 votes in now. Well, almost 2/3 of people are saying, yes, they are justified. Even if they turn violent? What do you say to that? Tweet me more, but let's have a look at some of the tweets you guys are sending us here. Rabia van Square says, Newsroom, it seems like the only way we will get government's attention when we protest. As a resident of Eldorado Park, I firmly support the protest. Yes, says Rabia van Square. Paul says, yes, but no to violence. This is all linked to poverty and the lack of opportunities. Address economic freedom, and we see the drop in protest. Yes, but is this only government's responsibility? Lechasa says, Newsroom, all those protests, everyone has a right to protest. Our constitution says so, but can protesters say no to looting? Interesting one. Interesting one. What should be the responsibility of business, for instance, when we talk about creating opportunities within our communities? Do you only take out and you don't put back in? Is that the history of South African business, for instance? These are questions we have to answer. Let's take a look at our Facebook page now and see what you can get. Police in the Mpumalanga province have cautioned residents living near or around the Kruger National Park to be cautious, as there are 5 lions on the loose. Imagine that. Only in South Africa. The lions escaped from the park and are currently roaming the streets and the farms of the area, obviously seeking a meal. We also see parliamentary spokesperson Moloto Motapo has defended the danger pay of 400 Rand for parliamentary security personnel, dubbed the white shirts by some. This follows the economic freedom fighters' condemnation of the danger pay. Well, fists are flying, aren't they? It's dangerous in parliament, they say. Finally, South Koreans went to the polls earlier to choose a new president after Park Geun-hye was ousted and indicted for corruption and against a backdrop of high tensions with the nuclear armed North. All of those stories and more on our Facebook page. Also, you can go to our website. But don't forget to like this Facebook page, because all the latest stuff will come into your feed and you'll be able to interact with us in real time. Let's take a quick look around the front pages from around the globe. We'll start in New York, where the New York Times reports that after Sally Key Yates warned President Trump that his national security advisor, Michael T. Flynn, was vulnerable to foreign blackmail, Mr. Flynn held his job for 18 more days, they report. Then in Australia, the Australian says the government needs an extra $6 billion to fully fund the NDIS and also announced a new demerit points welfare system. Finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is willing to negotiate minimal land swaps along the 1967 borders of the Nabil Shah, the Palestinian leader's foreign policy advisor. He said that yesterday. Those are the headlines around the world right now. Here in South Africa, we're dealing with protests, and we'll talk more about the psyche of what's happening in Eldorado Park after a short break. Don't miss it.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News Live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Municipal League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Now, Eldorado Park residents south of Johannesburg have vowed to continue with their protests until their housing demands are met. It's very quiet today, but yesterday they engaged in day-long running battles with police who constantly fired rubber bullets. Several shops were vandalized and looted. 7 people were arrested for public violence. Now, these protesters say they can no longer just sit and fold their arms as government continues to ignore them. Joining us now in studio is social commentator and a resident in Eldorado Park, Dr. Leonard Martin. A very good morning to you, sir. And
good morning, Elvis, and good morning to the viewers.
First and foremost, I want to check with you, what are some of the underlying issues that are affecting the residents of Eldorado Park?
Well, Elvis, I think it should be evident now, so many years into democracy, that areas like Eldorado Park have literally been experiencing an almost cut-off, a deficit in development in literally every sphere. This frames the social and economic issues that have been piling up in Eldorado Park. Issues relating to the youth, education, issues of opportunities for business, unemployment, the total lack of housing, and of course, spiraling crime, the drug, flooding that seems to be a major market for drug syndicates has impacted enormously on the pressures that are affecting the community.
Is the protest only affecting Eldorado Park? Because we've also seen residents from Freedom Park demonstrating together with the residents of Eldorado Park and some of the challenges facing the community.
This is not new. I mean, Slovo Park, Freedom Park, there are a number of issues in relation to access to housing in areas where there has been RTP houses built. So there's great dissatisfaction in terms of how these housing lists, and the housing lists on their own, are a major social problem. It's not just an administrative problem, it's a social problem of people believing that there are illicit ways of getting onto the housing lists. These have never been cleared to the dissatisfaction, especially in terms of residents in Freedom Park. So it's not a surprise, and it has happened before. Remember, this is not the first major uprising in Eldorado Park. About 4 years ago, there was another major uprising where people seized land to make the point that there's a critical housing deficit in Eldorado Park. And at that time, the MEC for Housing, Mr. Ruby Matang, and a huge contingent from the Gauteng government visited Eldorado Park and made promises. There's the idea that promises were not made. None of the promises that were made to the residents of Eldorado Park about housing, about models of houses that could be built. There was even a model displayed. All that has just gone into the sand. So there has been a sense among Eldorado Park residents that there's a strategic political exclusion in terms of their constitutionally guaranteed rights to housing, the issues of unemployment, overcrowding. None of these have effectively been dealt with.
The Eldorado Park Business Forum was here earlier, and they indicated that these protests are all socio-economically driven. Is it perhaps a sense also that there's maybe political motivation around these protests?
Well, we need to understand how in a community like Eldorado Park, one could attempt to build almost a wall between what is political and what is socio-economic. The sense of exclusion of the Eldorado Park community is that this is politically motivated on the part of the recognized or dominant political parties. These parties have been making promises for over 22 years, and none of these promises have materialized. In fact, the residents of Eldorado Park feel there's a growing arrogance, a suppression of their right to voice these basic constitutionally guaranteed rights.
Now, Doctor, we're conducting a poll this morning because we've seen the violence or the protests leading to violence yesterday, and we're asking the question, should communities protest without violence, and is it even possible? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Elvis, from a social point of view, the greater the preponderance of poverty, the greater the spread of poverty, and we must remember here that the issue of overcrowding is affecting education. the issue of overcrowding is affecting the stability of families. It's, in fact, productive of violence. So we cannot say that when these frustrations literally burst out, that they will be accompanied by, what you would call normal peaceful protests. It's within the situation. And of course, the actions of the police are not necessarily not provocative. So you have a clash and a misunderstanding of the reasons for these protests.
So in your sense, these protests are justified by the
They're absolutely justified from any angle. If you look at the depth of poverty in Eldorado Park, the absence of a voice being listened to and responded to with the justness that it requires, these protests are definitely justified.
We've seen now these protest actions moving to other areas, namely Ennerdale as well as Lawley. What is happening there? Are they faced with the same challenges that the community of Eldorado Park is faced with?
Well, ours is almost a duplication of the same socio-economic deficits, the same socio-economic situation. Unemployment of the youth especially, the lack of housing, lack of access to housing, and of course the feeling in these communities that they are being suppressed in terms of expressing their constitutional rights.
What are the answers to the questions that the community is asking, Doctor?
Well, there has to be a qualitative change in the dialogue between communities, the municipality and the state. The suppression on the part of these demonstrations by the actions of the police cannot be the social answer to advancing an effective dialogue.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much.
That was social commentator and resident in Eldorado Park, Dr. Leonard Martin. What's your thoughts on the matter? We're asking you that question today, and can we protest without violence? Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. We'll pick it up right after the 10 o'clock news. But right now, it's heating up on the weather front. Let's find out from Tsetsi Munari if that is really the case.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. You'll see some partly cloudy skies towards the northeastern and the southeastern parts of South Africa. And in fact, not so much heating up is taking place. It's getting a lot cooler, especially starting with the southwest coming in towards the northeastern reaches of South Africa. A bit of a cold front moving our way there. Rainfall is expected towards Kenya and also for Malawi, Zambia, and all the way towards the DRC. But stronger chances are expected in these dark patches there of blue. So you can expect up to 60% chance of rainfall along those parts. For Madagascar, also a bit of rain is expected along the coast, but mostly it's going to be quite clear over the interior of Madagascar. And also clear skies are expected for South Africa, with a bit of rainfall expected just along that northwestern interior, moving all the way up north through Namibia. There are your temperatures. It's going to be quite a warm day for Upington and for a place such as Kukuza along Mpumalanga province. But the rest are expected to be mild and cool. Some fine temperatures are expected, or fine weather is expected towards Bloemfontein and Durban, with a possibility of rain for Komani and for all those that are going to be in Port Elizabeth. Grahamstown is going to be quite chilly for the next couple of days. In fact, temperatures might drop to only 13 degrees by next week, Monday, or even before the end of this week. Francistown is at 26, 24 for Bulawayo, with sunny skies expected for Harare and Victoria Falls. Nampula reaches a maximum of 31 degrees. Off in towards Madagascar, again, the capital starts off at a maximum of about, or a minimum of about 19 degrees and a maximum of 22 later on. 27 for Moroni. Victoria is at 37 with sunny skies expected. But back into mainland and along the central part of Africa, Kinshasa is at 31 degrees. And just in general, upper 20s are expected from East Africa, moving all the way across into West Africa, with Luanda reaching a maximum of 28 degrees. A bit of rainfall coming your way along the central parts of the DRC, and some of it will move as far north as Ethiopia and Eritrea, with a bigger chance of rainfall expected just towards Kenya and also across towards Gabon, but only 30% of rainfall, 30% chance of rainfall expected towards Central African Republic. Gabon again sees up to a 60% chance of rain, so that's a good chance of rainfall by tomorrow. Hot weather though for Agadez, as well as for all those that are going to be up north in Cairo. It is indeed heating up towards the Middle East Riyadh at 39, Mecca 36, and Khartoum reaching a maximum of about 42 degrees. West Africa, well, nothing has changed here. It's most of the temperatures along the lower 20s for the northern parts. But for the south, it's going to be a lot hotter. From Niamey, 43, Agadez also at 43 degrees. And that includes Bamako, Timbuktu, going all the way towards the central part of Mali, and 32 for Abidjan, Lagos going all the way towards Yaoundé, as we've seen temperatures starting to drop a little bit there. That's where I leave it for the weather, but there will be more later. Do stay tuned. Water and sanitation underpin health, education, and livelihoods, yet hundreds of millions of people live without these basic human rights. In many countries around the world, taps, wells, and pipes simply don't exist, and even where they do, they are often not affordable to poor communities. Over 650 million people don't have access to safe drinking water. This is roughly 1 in 10 people of the world population. As you may have guessed, these are people living in developing countries. Even more shocking is that 2.3 billion people don't have access to adequate bathroom facilities. That translates to roughly 1 in 3 of the world's population. The consequences from this lack of proper sanitation leads to water pollution, increased vulnerability to diseases, and children missing numerous crucial schooling hours, amongst others. In many countries, children of schooling age spend countless hours walking unsafe routes to collect drinking water. And in most cases, the water is not even safe. About 860 children die every day from diarrhea caused by drinking unsafe, polluted water. SABC News, making you water-wise.
They say you can tell a nation's greatness by how it takes care of the old.
Boikhutso Old Age Home e qadilwe ke the municipality ka di 1950s. We changed it from an old age home rather it's an old age center because refer the services tse dingata to batsofe ba ba leng in the community.
Mokgatlo na mema mosala o rentse batho kwae ke siyayithanda kwae ke siyayixhasa ngento zonke.
Every year we show our gratitude to our elderly by just being present.
It's so wonderful to be here and it's so amazing to celebrate your day. This is your day. This is not our day.
Re ga bua le bo Osmanana ba bua hore re hloka sena re hloka sane re di rekile di teng kaofela dintho tse.
Re batla ho bona seriti sa motho e mong le e mong se ntlafala mo re ka kenyang letsoho teng re tlo buela re khutla hape re kenya letsoho.
Le re file a very great start and it will a very long way.
We salute those who give our elders their dignity back. SABC Foundation, inspiring greater possibilities.
It is 6 p.m. Central African Time, broadcasting live from Johannesburg. This is Primetime News.
South Africa said farewell to one of the Rivonia trialists, Uncle Kathy, a fearless stalwart.
With this man who was so engaged, so busy, so witty, so funny, so wise, and so incredibly principled.
Joseph Shabalala has been honored for his contribution to the South African music industry. A statue in his honor was unveiled during an annual gala dinner in Ladysmith.
The shot of the day, however, belonged to American Daniel Berger, who chipped in for an eagle on the par 4 fifth hole.
For all your news updates, stay on Primetime News every Saturday and Sunday from 6 p.m.
Yeah, welcome back. It's just gone 10 o'clock Central African time. Nice to be back with you here on the Newsroom show. Myself and Kendall Makamata will be with you for the next hour, bringing you news and, of course, a big sports update. Very good morning.
A very good morning, and I'm looking forward to what's going to be happening tonight. We've got Cape Town City Super Sports United, as well as Juve against Monaco.
Yeah, it should be very, very interesting. I think the next couple of weeks, football is just going to be in high gears. Finally, I think people are starting to play for trophies and so forth. Of course, yeah, the big news for me coming back is, well, Protest Nation. Yes, we're dealing with more and more protests, it seems, here in South Africa. For me, of course, well, no surprises when I got back. But we ask you the question, how do we protest without the violence and the looting that we are seeing so regularly when people voice their unhappiness? That's the question to you. You guys are tweeting us here, Kendall.
Yeah, let's see what's being said about this, a very hot topic. Paul says, well, criminal elements take advantage of protests. Responding favorably to peaceful protests may help discourage the culture of violence.
Very interesting take on that, Paul. Samuel Ramon Singh says, Newsroom, people are tired for the empty promises and you can't do nothing when they are furious. South African government, it's time to wake up and deliver. Yes, Samuel, there's also an element of business having to deliver the opportunities. Brian Petro, what does he say?
Now, he reckons keeping faith that this government would listen, maybe by using social media.
Use the technology, reach out. JP says to us, Newsroom, that's what it is. Looting is part of a protest of this kind. JP, no. Looting should never be part of any protest, especially with the context of the history and our fight
100%.
that have brought us to where we are as a nation today.
Yeah, and it's always loaded every single time there's a protest. Bonakele Kapito says, no way, if we're peaceful, they don't listen. These people, they only attend things when violence erupts. Being peaceful, you just waste your time.
That is the challenge that we have to overcome. How do we communicate without it turning violent? How do we interact with each other without hurting each other?
100%.
It seems it's a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword in South African context, and it needs to be resolved.
Well, protests are ongoing in our communities right now. We'll keep, of course, this question going. Tweet us what you think, but let's get into our work. Time to do the news. Protest action in Eldorado Park has now spread to other places in the south of Johannesburg. Ennerdale and Lawley have become the latest to be hit by violent outbursts. The South African National Civic Organisation has applied to review the court decision to grant Peter Duravad and Philip Schutte from Collini bail. And 5 lions have reportedly escaped, and now some are still on the loose from the Kruger Park. They are said to be in and around Mpumalanga. Well, interesting story there. Let's go over to Kendall for the sport.
Well, this is what we've got for you in the sports. Lots going on in the world of sports, and in fact, it's almost all football, as this is what we're bringing for you at 10:40 today. Title chasers Cape Town City FC travel to Pretoria, intent on grabbing 3 points from a resurgent Super Sport United.
Fabregas, as Peliqueta, Alonso, he's found the gap! It's a big gap now between Chelsea and the rest.
Chelsea are 1 win away from taking the English Premiership as they relegate Middlesbrough with a 3-0 thrashing in London last night. Bouchard beats Maria Sharapova for the first time in a 3-set thrill of a grudge match after she called the Russian a cheat following her doping ban.
Most people have my opinion and they were just maybe scared to speak out, but privately, you know, I've gotten a lot of support.
All this in more detail at 10:40 when you get to the sport. For now, it is back to Eben, who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much to Kendall, and a very good morning to you. Our top story right now is that the protest action in Eldorado Park has now spread to other places in the south of Johannesburg. These are just some of the latest pictures coming out of Ennerdale and Lawley as they've become the latest to be hit by protests. Residents say they are tired of the non-development in the area. And as you can see, these are live pictures. I have to stress they're live pictures coming in from the ground. And as you can see that, well, the police are on the hunt for criminals who are out there. But Griselda is on the street. Griselda, give us an overview. What are we seeing?
Well, Urban, these are live pictures from Ennerdale here in the south of Johannesburg, where you see police have now moved from street to street and are trying to move back the crowd here after some of the residents had brought in more tyres to be burnt. Recall, of course, that the residents have been on the rampage since very early this morning over underdevelopment, alleged underdevelopment, and what they're saying is a massive youth unemployment. Now, the police are moving towards just right in front of me after several residents have been flinging stones. They've fired more tear gas over the past couple of minutes. The situation continues to be tense, but police are really finding themselves in between a rock and a hard place at this point as they try to move to the different areas here. And the residents are essentially strewn. The residents have run to the different areas around here in Ennerdale, so police are going to have to spread themselves to the different areas where the residents have tried to move to. But more tear gas, more stun grenades police have fired over the past couple of hours. As you can see, police are really trying to get the situation under control here. As I earlier indicated, what sparked this was there had been a protest by residents earlier that'd been burning tyres, but then when police tried to engage with them a bit earlier on, more tyres were brought in, and police said they felt the need then to ensure that residents were not going to burn those tyres. And that's when we had the stun grenades as well as the tear gas being fired, as well as the rubber bullets. More running battles continue here. I'm just trying to get as safe as possible as I can with our camera person, Mangoba Nkosi, as well, because you would see from that direction, just in front of me, more police are moving towards the area where residents have now run to and continue to fling stones at the police. You see here more rubber bullets as well. And just a few minutes ago, stun grenades as well. Recall, of course, let's just recap very briefly there, Elvis, as well as Urban. You'd recall in the run-up to the local government election, this particular area, the very area, was a scene of similar violence, and it was also due to the very same concerns of underdevelopment as well as youth unemployment. So what these residents are saying is, you'd recall during that time, in the run-up to the local government elections, you had the Democratic Alliance as well as the ANC were very active in this area and promised that there would be development that would take place. They were going to go into talks to ensure that something is done in this particular area. But residents are saying now nothing has since happened, and certainly this has also been sparked by the violence that we saw in Eldorado Park yesterday. That community too, with similar challenges. You see the police moving towards where I am at the moment, also trying to get away from the stones that continue to be flung here in Ennerdale, in the south of Johannesburg. The running battles, of course, continue, but what police, I guess, would need to do now, as the residents are moving to the different areas, they're going to have to try and deploy as many police officers as possible to the different areas. But these residents are certainly not letting up and are saying that they will continue with their action for the remainder of the day until someone in authority comes and listens to them. They say you saw political parties here in the run-up to the local government elections. They went out and cast their ballots, but are saying now that the politicians do not see the need to come to this area again. Just bear with us there for a few seconds as well, Urban. As you see, police just in front of me, just readying themselves, of course, as they try to deal with the situation here. Well, the violence has also spread to one of the areas not too far here from Ennerdale as well, Eben, and that is in the Lawley area. Remember as well, in the run-up to the local government elections, you did see as well in Lawley. Lawley was one of the areas as well where residents had also complained of underdevelopment as well as unemployment. So you've also seen scenes of violence there as well. We've not managed to get there to that particular area right now, but we're going to try and have to maneuver from Ennerdale here where we are to the Lawley area. Let's just have a look at that, Mangoba. Towards my left, you'll see police are readying themselves. You see more stones being flung towards the direction where we are. And I see police, there you have it. Police more rubber bullets as well as stun grenades. It's quite difficult to broadcast from where we are here, but as a result of the stones that are being flung. And I think most importantly at this point, we're just trying to ensure that you're not hit with a brick on your head. Certainly those are scenes that we saw where journalists also came under attack in Eldorado Park yesterday. And you see those young people there are the ones who are flinging the stones even towards our direction. Just give us 1 second. We're just about to wrap it up there, Yeben. You see police are charging towards those youths that are throwing those stones. But this is how the situation has been unfolding since very early on this morning. Eben, we'll hand back to you. We'll certainly come back to you live from Ennerdale with all the latest from here. As residents say, they'll continue with their protest action until there is development in this area and the issue of youth unemployment is addressed.
Yeah, thank you very much too, Griselda. Interesting pictures, isn't it, coming out? You see the police there shooting at youth who are obviously protesting and fighting. Some say there's an element of mimicking what's been happening elsewhere in the south of Johannesburg. Of course, moving on, the farmers' organisation Agri-SA has condemned the violent action taking place in Collini. At least 4 houses have so far been reported torched, one belonging to a farmer. The president of Agri-SA, Johannes Miller, says it cannot be allowed that members of society take the law into their own hands if they're not satisfied with the proceedings of a court of law. Some white residents of Collini were seen leaving the town this morning in fear of possible further attacks on their homes. Now, Oleboheng Khosilentwe earlier talked to us about what the situation was like there this morning.
Been close. We are heading to June examinations. How has this incident in Collini really affected the education system?
This incident has affected all grades in all schools and high schools. And I would emphasize to say especially grade 3, 6, 9, and 12. Because these are the people who are writing usual external question papers. The exam is handled externally. Now, one thing, for these 5 days that had been wasted, it says to me, teachers would be lagging behind on syllabus coverage. And for the learners to write these exams, they need to be updated, well-informed, well-learned, knowing, revising everything that needs to be revised.
All right, Mr. Mnyakama, you've also been at the forefront leading the community ever since Matlomola passed away. What do you have to say about what transpired here yesterday? A lot of houses being burnt down, businesses being broken into.
It's unfortunate, but one has got to say, this situation cannot go unabated, number one. Number two, ordinary people, innocent people are losing properties, as we have also lost an innocent soul. This to us is very painful, realizing that if this thing could keep on going, one death, it will be more chaotic. I'm afraid this thing will heighten the racial tension. Although I had to say in the same breath, it's not every white man who's a racist. I will keep on emphasizing on this. We've got good examples of those who are, others are our son-in-laws, others we also have Makotis right down in town.
It's a developing story. We'll keep you updated on what is happening in Collini. Of course, racial tensions have been flaring up there now. To another story that's developing and causing quite a lot of consternation in the eastern parts of Mpumalanga is that rangers, well, they are continuing their search for 5 lions that reportedly escaped from the Kruger National Park there. The predators are thought to be close to the N4 highway in the Mananga area, close to the border with Swaziland. Police have called on the public to be alert.
On the N4, just before the Libombo border, there is a road that goes to Mananga border. And that area is much frequented by people. We are calling on people to be safe and to be cautious. They must not park their vehicles along the road, nor answer a call of nature along that area, because currently is infested with these 5 lions.
People must stay away from these lions, and if they, for any reason, are able to spot them, they must immediately report to either the police in their area or MTPA offices or our ranger at Crocodile Bridge for them to quickly come and assess the situation.
Now, moving further afield, the United Nations says its various agencies will continue to work with communities in Nigeria to ensure that the freed Chibok girls are not ostracized by the communities. The global organization has welcomed the release of the additional 82 girls by the Boko Haram insurgent group after negotiations that saw several of its commanders released by the Nigerian government in turn.
Meeting the country's ailing head of state after their release, with concerns now that after years in captivity and abuse, local communities would be reluctant to welcome them back.
We've seen not only in Nigeria, but a lot in other places where mostly women, obviously vast majority of women and girls who have come out of areas where they have been subject to untold horrors, sexual abuse, torture, that sometimes they have not been re-accepted in their communities and re-embraced in their communities for various reasons, as much as they should be and they deserve to be. And so for us, it's a matter of not only working with the young girls and the girls themselves, but also working with the communities to ensure that they are re-accepted. And we've seen that, unfortunately, throughout the world, where often victims of rape are then shunned by their own communities.
The girls were among 270 schoolgirls kidnapped in April 2014, with the government securing their release with mediation by the International Committee of the Red Cross.
We remain deeply concerned about the safety and well-being of the schoolgirls and other victims still in custody. We appeal to all Nigerians, including the families and local communities of the liberated girls, to fully embrace them and provide all necessary support to ensure their reintegration into society. We also urge the international community to continue supporting the government of Nigeria in its effort to ensure the release and rehabilitation and reintegration of all of Boko Haram's victims.
While the release has been welcomed, human rights groups estimate that thousands of men, women and children have been abducted by Boko Haram during the group's 8-year insurgency. Sherman Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
Well, to talk about this story and others on our Foreign Diary, we're joined now by our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena. Very good morning to you, Sophie. Great to have you with us.
Morning.
Sophie, this Chibok story is an interesting one because some of the girls did not want to be released after, and it's interesting, their world have moved on now, hasn't it?
Yes, maybe partially the world has moved on, but the reality is the Nigerian government is still compelled to ensure that all of them are released. They are integrated to the society. They are with their families. Perhaps thereafter, then those who want to go back can do it at their own will. But remember, when this thing happened, it was an abduction, and therefore it is the responsibility of government and all institutions around the world to ensure that those who want to go back, they are back with the families, but also for the families to have access to those who don't want to come back. And you still have many of the girls still in that area. Therefore, it's up to government and the world at large to ensure that those who want to go home or to be integrated with the society and the families, they do so. But secondly, the important issue is to ensure that moving forward, their well-being is taken care of. Those who want to go back to school because they were taken at school, in other words, they wanted to be educated, you ensure that they get the education they want. Some of them have got children. You must ensure that society understand that this was not planned and therefore they can't continue to harass them. You know, with us people at times, the issue of stigma is a problem. We have to deal with issue of stigma. When I spoke to Priyanka Chopra on Sunday, that's the concern that she raised.
I just want to point out to our viewers, you've got live pictures coming in. We're showing you the live pictures coming in from Ennerdale. That's in the south of Johannesburg, where we have continuing running battles with police. But Sophie, let's get back to the story. More than 100 girls are still missing. And this in itself puts pressure on President Buhari to come up with a solution for this. Do you feel that the Nigerian government and the world at large have adequately dealt with this story over the months and years?
They have tried, but they still have to do more. You'd recall that people have been complaining that Nigerian government is slow in resolving this question. And now the other challenge currently is that the president, who was at the forefront of the negotiations, is now in London for a medical checkup. Therefore, and he had issued an instruction that those girls should not be integrated until he is back. What happens to those children there or those girls there? Therefore, the issue of the health of the president also now is another problem.
I want to talk about the health of the problem because it seems as if his health is deteriorating. He was in Britain for treatment for 2 months, which says to me that his condition must be quite serious.
Well, let me tell the truth. When I went down to Nigeria or up to Nigeria during the elections, when I saw him during his victory speech, I was taken aback. You could see that he's got problems. And then, of course, it transpired that it's a health problem. Therefore, he has been constantly going to London for treatment. And this time around, what's even more worrying is that he indicated that it's not clear when he will be back in Nigeria. Therefore, it speaks to the challenge. And when you look at him also, the pictures don't lie.
Yeah, it's a grave challenge facing the president of Nigeria's health. But this is one of the stories, of course. One of the other big stories for SADC and for South Africa is that the SADC facilitator, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, well, he is expected to visit Lesotho ahead of the Mountain Kingdom's June 3 election.
In under a month, Lesotho is going to elections. SADC facilitator, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to oversee interventions for a conducive environment. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has been coming to Lesotho since 2014, and every time he comes to the capital, Maseru, it sparks fierce debates for two reasons: whether his mediation has been effective and if it should continue. And this time is no different. 25 days before the election, civil society is skeptical about the time left to make a meaningful difference.
This shortcoming of him coming in and out in the same day, really, it is not productive for attaining the sustainable peace for Lesotho. But at the moment, because always he meet one group to and another group individually, that's why we may say we have not yet seen much of the progress on his mediation processes.
This is Lesotho's third elections in 5 years, and fellow members in SADC are concerned.
We really cannot afford to keep using the scarce resources for this festival of democracy. It's necessary. It's very necessary, but it's not cheap. Because if it doesn't happen, then people take up arms. If they take up arms, then you even go into deeper alleys. But we hope that the people of Lesotho will finally find some way also to focus on issues of development post this forthcoming elections.
As usual, he's expected to pay a courtesy call on His Majesty the King. He will meet the Prime Minister, the government, he will meet the opposition, civil society and churches. But with just 25 days to go to Lesotho's elections, the big question is, can this visit in fact create a conducive environment for elections? And can he indeed convene that multi-stakeholder conference before June the 3rd? Ntakwana Ngadane, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Yeah, of course, I've got Sophie Makwena with me in studio still. Sophie, this visit by Cyril Ramaphosa, as you can see, it divides opinion there a little bit. Some say it's not enough, no more needs to be done. Tell us about this visit. And I understand he's touched down there already.
Yes, he has arrived. He has landed at Mushweshe 1, the airport there, and he was received by the Deputy Prime Minister, Motejwa Metsing, and our ambassador, Sulo Moloto, who's currently the ambassador in Lesotho, and he is expected to hit the ground running. The first meeting, obviously, it will be with the King as the procedure, and therefore government meetings, and then start meeting all stakeholders. But as Ntakwana has indicated in that insert, the concern is that it's too late. But also the other problem is that I'm told at the SADC meeting in Swaziland a few months ago, where preparations were underway to hand over the chairmanship to South Africa. In this case, in August, President Zuma will be the chair of SADC. Minister Mashaban will then be chair of ministerial level. There is a concern from SADC member countries that you can't always have elections in Lesotho. And the problem is one, it's the constitution, the floor crossing. And I think what is important for the mediator, but also for SADC, the coming SADC meeting in August, is to ensure that whoever wins must ensure that they move with speed to implement the constitutional reforms.
Quickly before we go, will they be ready for the election? Because Tom Tabane has come out and he said, oh, security concerns, he thinks it's not going to be peaceful.
When you look at what has transpired, currently it's relatively peaceful and everybody's campaigning. But, you know, it's elections and political parties always make statements during elections. But also we're looking at Kenya. You are aware that in August we'll have elections in Kenya. And, of course, in the same month in June, we have Britain, the snap election. So there's a lot. And, of course, President Zuma going to Tanzania on Wednesday.
You talk about the president visiting Tanzania this week. Just tell us about this visit and why this visit is so important.
It is important. You'll recall that many freedom fighters from different movements or the liberation organizations were based in Tanzania. And you know very well the history of Morogoro, how the MK had camps there. And of course, the relations continue. And the strange thing is that Tanzania is both SADC but also EAC.
Yeah.
Therefore, but it looks like the former President Kikwete was more comfortable being in the SADC activities rather than EAC. And the current President, Makafule, it looks like he prefers EAC, but the reality is they are part of SADC, and the president is visiting that country. So it's a question of bilateral, but also trade. And coincidentally, both presidents are still more in mourning. We recall the accident in South Africa where many learners died, and the same thing happened on Saturday in Tanzania, where a student died in a bus accident. A lot, 32 of them. So I think what a coincidence.
Now, internationally, before I let you go, Sophie, internationally, of course, the big story is that France have woken up to a new political order now. Emmanuel Macron with a resounding victory, really, and a much bigger margin, I think, than people expected.
Well, it was a pushback, nothing else but a pushback. People are saying we don't want right-wing politics. We differ with Macron. He's a capitalist. Majority are socialists. But we are going to push back. We cannot be led by a right-wing leader. But secondly, people are saying we are tired of the more established politics, you know, to rule the country. The same thing happened in America, but unfortunately, it didn't go the way it had to go. People were hoping that Bernie would win, but unfortunately, the Democrats decided on Hillary Clinton, who was not so good in the public opinion. She had experience and everything, but people were tired of the Clintons, and therefore they went for Trump, and a disaster. Now in Europe, people are trying to pushback because
Yeah.
you saw what happened with Brexit. So I think Angela Merkel is very happy where she is. And the EU, of course.
Yeah, and this, of course, is a big shot in the arm for the EU because Marine Le Pen was going to pull out. And we see this rise of right-wing politics, not just in Europe, but around the world. Are we concerned?
We have to be concerned. We have to be concerned. I think France led by example, push back, and I think many countries will definitely do the same. And therefore, I think it is for that reason the Prime Minister in Britain, you can see that she's kind of worried. She might win, but the margin, I'm not so sure. Unfortunately, the Labour Party is in a crisis.